All right, welcome to another episode of the Snafu Podcast. I'm Rick, your host. With me is Jeff,
Howdy.
Dale,
Hey guys.
and Pat.
Good morning, good afternoon. In case I don't see you, good evening.
Well, it is currently evening in the sunny state of Minnesota, or sunny frozen state of Minnesota. It's still pretty cold here. Anyway, welcome to episode 3. We're going to talk about a bunch of things. We have some cool news coming up, as well as we have our first listener feedback, and we wanted to kind of address that. We're also going to talk about Battle of the Bulge book because there's lots of cool stuff in there, and we wanted to check it out. So let's start with hobby updates. Dale, what are you working on right now?
All right, so actually the last time that we recorded our episode, I felt like I kind of cheaped out a little bit because I didn't really do anything other than think about what would be really cool to do. So I made sure to make sure that I got something done so that I could talk about it. So previously I've got the Japanese sitting on my desk, and this is just what is remaining from the first order of Japanese I picked up. And so I've got those base coated at this point, and I got the first wash down and then the first highlight back on all of the uniforms at this point in time. And so maybe another couple days worth of work and I'll be able to wrap up all of those. And then because I was waiting for the dip to dry, I pulled out the medium howitzer.
You mean wash, right?
Yeah, wash, dip. It's kind of all the same thing. And then the Japanese medium tank that I picked up with the Army deal. I say medium because it says medium in the Japanese book, but I think Armor 8 is like a light tank for everybody else. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So it's a Japanese medium tank, but it's the light tank for everybody else. So.
Well, they consider it huge, right? So it's one of the bigger tanks they got.
I'm impressed by it, but I'm used to overselling small things, so it works out for me in the end.
Nice.
And then
Wow.
I've got like 4 or 5 orders out for lots of fun, cool stuff that hopefully I'll be able to talk about soon. So, but it's good. Oh, and just a quick thing. When we came into Bolt Action, and I was looking at the miniatures. You guys were bringing in your miniatures first. I came in after you guys because I was just kind of sitting on the fence. And I know that you guys have mentioned a few times how much you really like metal miniatures. And the last time I worked this much with metal miniatures was like 15, 20 years ago with Games Workshop and 40 Plague Monks and 40 Skaven Slaves. And it was awful. And so I've always just kind of gone with the plastics. But these veterans, Imperial Japanese veterans, that I'm going through now, they're these metal miniatures. You know what? I'm kind of on board a little bit. I'm really enjoying these, so it's a good job. So I mean, they're still metal, but I might be a reformed metal fan. I don't know. We'll see. So, but yeah, it's a good progress for me this time around.
I find that the metal ones glue your fingers less together than the plastic ones do.
I find I swear less at my metal ones.
Both very positive aspects that I hadn't thought about. So thanks for that, guys. Two more reasons why I can like my metal miniatures.
I feel like you're cleaning them a lot less too, to be fair. I don't feel like there's quite as much flashing on metal miniatures. And they tend to seem to have a little more detail in my perspective, but that's just the ones that I've worked with.
Yeah, which seems kind of reverse from the Games Workshop stuff that we've done previously, where I suspect though that's more just because of the timing of the molds and what they were pushing versus Warlord.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a fan.
I think Games Workshop was really pushing the plastic, like the envelope with plastic, and we were getting spoiled rotten with them. So I think people are catching up, but they're not where GW was even now. So it just takes a matter of time. I do remember just reading a story about, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you guys can post it on Facebook if you want. But I remember hearing something about a couple guys just left GW to do model making for another company, but I can't remember which company it was. But apparently they're pushing other companies to move forward as well, which I thought was kind of cool. So it's kind of a nice little segue. So Jeff, what are you working on right now?
Well, I think the last episode I'd gotten my order of Dragon Portes in that Crusader Miniatures makes. As the other guys will tell you, I liked them so much I cracked them out on the painting table and got them into a couple games. So I've been very, very happy with those, to the point where I ordered, I think, another dozen or so of them, because I'm going to make them most of my frontline infantry from now on. In addition to that, my other order finally showed up, so I have a primed Char B1 Bis on my table. I haven't had a chance to paint that yet, but that's probably the heaviest tank at the start of the war that anybody had. It's got a 75mm in the hull and a 47mm in a turret. Looks a little goofy. It wasn't actually the best tank ever made, but hey, it's kind of fun. So there's that. But that's most of my table right now. And then I've got a couple other orders out, of course, for some terrain. I've kind of completed what I want for my French army, so we're moving into some terrain pieces now.
Cool. All right. I know he's itching to talk about it because I've seen pictures of it all week. Pat, what are you working on?
Which pictures? We finished up the hedgerows or bocages, and in fact, those things look so awesome on the table that I ordered a whole bunch more. But that's coming from UK, so that'll be a couple weeks before we deal with those.
I wish I'd known you were going to order because I probably would have hitched a ride on that order because those do
It was
look
from
really nice.
Amazon.
Oh, okay. Then it wouldn't
So
have mattered anyway.
that's WW Scenics, which has got a great line of historical, actually World War Europe stuff. Really good quality products. At least the ones I've gotten from them are pretty nice.
I think I've actually
Um,
seen them. I've actually eyed up a bunch of his stuff. I remember seeing a bunch of his work in weird spots.
I do also have ordered from him some like a desert oasis sort of thing that I'll be doing for my desert board, ironically enough. And I got that a while ago, and I've just been kind of sitting on that because my wife decided that I need to spend some money for her, so she let me buy the Pegasus Bridge kit, that big MDF kit from Sarissa Precision. Wow, that was a fun kit to put together. In the instructions, they actually said, "Get yourself a drink and sit down." I thought that was hysterical, and well, I did. And it took me about 4.5 hours. I mean, all those MDF kits always seem to have a little trick to them that you figure out in the first, 20 or 15 minutes of what they're actually showing you in their pictures versus what you're actually thinking in your head or what you put together before. But once I got used to that, it went together pretty smoothly actually. It's huge. It takes up my table and the floor next to it, but I have it all put together, primed. I've got the buildings that come with the kit all together. I've also got the bunker all together. Those are ready to be primed. And now I'm just trying to figure out how to get a board together to make the best use of it. Because the actual scenario has, like, essentially, if you're to put this on a 6x4, like almost 2 feet down the middle of the lengthwise is taken up by the river, the channel or whatever that's there. So I think for gameplay, I'm going to try and tweak that down to, foot to 15 inches to try and get more playing surface on the board and put some cool terrain together just to make use of that. So that's daunting, but Dale encouraged me, said I could do a good job with it, so thanks, Dale. Now I've got it, and I think I'm doing pretty good so far.
Yeah, nice. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how that turns out. Now, the Pegasus Bridge, was this like a real bridge somewhere that played a role in the war, or is it just something cool someone put together?
It actually, I don't remember what the original name of the bridge, but it was taken by the paratroopers just before D-Day. It was one of 3 bridges that they had to take and hold to keep the Germans from reinforcing the land against the landing. So it was a real thing.
Okay, that's actually, that makes it even more especially cool. So yeah, my only and seeing the bridge assembled and everything like that. My only thought, and it sounds like you've already thought about that, is it kind of forces the table to be a certain way. But if you can tweak that and come up with something that's going to be cool and interesting, yeah, that'll be awesome. Great centerpiece for a table.
You all know what the fun solution to that is, Pat, is you just get yourself 2 4x4 tables, scoot them kind of close to each other, and have Pegasus Bridge span from one to the next.
I like where you're going there, Jeff.
That's a unique setup.
Just have it be a gap in the table. It's kind of a cool idea.
You're right.
It's actually a cool story, Dale, if you go and read up on it, because I think the first casualty of D-Day happened on that bridge, but there were like paratroopers that literally like landed on the bridge in their gliders, like super close.
Yeah,
And the Germans were totally caught off guard by it. They were like, "Oh, what?"
the ditch in front of it. Yep,
Yeah.
they landed on the control side. Now, why they didn't just run that baby up, I don't know, but they held the bridge. I haven't read the story too thoroughly, but they actually does come with 3 scenarios that circle around the story of it, which is, I mean, obviously were designed for you to play these scenarios with it, but of course we can do more than that. So that's the main thing that's sitting on there. I will have to take a small break from that board. I've got some SAS Infantry Special Air Services Britain coming in that I need to paint up before Adepticon hits. So that'll interrupt my fun train stuff when it shows up. But that's certainly enough to keep going right now.
Cool. And I was referring to the bridge because I know you were super excited about it. You put that thing together, like you got it and put it together in like a day, which was impressive.
I was kind of excited.
Very cool. Well, I'm working on those Americans still. I literally pinning them to magnetized bases and going crazy on them. I did weird things this week. Like I weighed down all my tanks. So I put carpenter's glue and sand inside all of my tank hulls just to give them some weight so they don't I don't sneeze and make them fly off the table. What else did I do? I
did that too with mine, except I had some extra plaster Paris on hand to use that. But basically the same concept, because those plastic tanks are really light.
Yeah, they don't have the heft that you would expect if you pick them up.
Well, especially if you get used to the full cast resin tanks.
Yeah.
And think you're picking up one of those. Yeah, you're going to run into trouble.
You feel like you're going to chuck it across the room on accident.
Yep.
I started putting all my jungles together. I realized I way underestimated how many palm trees I'm going to need. So I ordered another 160 trees this week. So we'll see when they get back from Asia. So that's the update for me. Another positive or awesome news for the week, or does anyone have any good thoughts about that?
I was just going to ask, Rick, you are going to actually be able to put miniatures on this table, right? It's not just...
No. I don't... Did you see my one prototype, Jeff?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, it's very modular. I'm trying to go for a cohesive look, but I also want it to be modular so you can pull the trees out of the way when you need them to. So all the trees are actually on magnetized basing.
Cool.
So everything will be like you can just when your guys run into that one set of the jungle area, they'll be able to move the trees out of the way so you can get in there. And I'm not making it super dense. I just want it to be visually cool from the top, look down, and you get a sense of jungle. But I do think I'm going to try and mix in some like stone, like some more, if you look at pictures of the Pacific, there's a lot of berms that are all like stony and stuff like that. So I'm going to try and add some of that in there as well. So I just have some line of sight blocker stuff that isn't necessarily just jungle.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know how far I'll get. I'm already think I'm scaling back the number of jungles I need because otherwise they're like 4 inches away from each other, and that just seemed like it might be too much. So hopefully I'll get it. I'll find the sweet spot in there somewhere. Hopefully. So yeah, and other cool news. I think all four of us got into the game day this coming up this summer or this spring.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, I think from our club, Eric also got in too.
Yeah, I believe we're 33% of that event.
Of the 12, 5 of us. Yeah, we got 5.
So it was awesome. It was 12 people are going to get to play in it, which it seems a little small, but I understand that this there's constraints that are outside of Jacob's control on this. He's got only so many tables and he can control the scenarios this way, and he's also at Fantasy Flight, so he's kind of at the whim of the store. But yeah, we're excited to get to play in that. So sign up was on Friday at noon, and we were all waiting there patiently to try and get onto it. It actually looks like it's going to be fun. There's a lot of good guys playing in it.
I had forgot about that, so thanks whoever threw that text out. I'm like sitting out with lunch with one of the guys, and I'm like, we gotta go back right now. What? We gotta go. Pick up your stuff. We gotta go.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that filled in 10 minutes tops?
I don't even think it was that. I honestly think it was like 5 minutes. I mean, to be fair, it was 12 people, so I can understand it filling up really quickly. But yeah, he could easily have made it 16.
I think there are 4 people on the waiting list.
There's 4
actually.
people on the waiting list already.
So
So
there were like almost immediately.
Yeah, I know for a fact that there's 4 people on the waiting list right now. So he could have put it at 16 people and it would have been just fine. But there's limitations, and he's looking at trying to scale it up if he can. So hopefully he gets to do that. I'm excited for it. And it sounds like 2 of the 4 of us so far are signed up for Bug Eater, which is another event, but that one's in Omaha, Nebraska. It's going to be
That
quite the
was
hike.
First weekend in June. It's same drive as going to Adepticon for us.
It's kind of close, yeah. It's 6 hours.
It's not too bad, actually.
No, it's not too far.
It doesn't seem like a bad drive, other than that you're driving through cornfields the whole time. Less tollways than Chicago, I believe.
There are no tollways to Nebraska.
But you need to make sure you drive the speed limit through Iowa. I've gotten a fair number of speeding tickets. Automated.
You just have to drive. You have to drive through the right parts of Iowa.
Don't drive through Des Moines. People.
Yeah, just avoid Des Moines altogether.
Skip Sioux City while you're at it too.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to hit 29 before Sioux City if you can. So.
Yeah.
All I know is I got several speed cameras taking pictures of my car driving through Iowa once. It made for a really happy weekend after a really happy weekend.
Just need one of those James Bond cars. We'll rotate the plates.
Yeah.
There's 2 of us, or we'll have to rent a car beforehand. There's 2 of us who are signed up. How come there aren't 4 of us signed up? What's going on there?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say I am waiting for final approval from my boss that I can be gone that many weekends, because we've got a couple weekends I'm gone before that too.
Okay. All right. Rick, what's your lame excuse?
I'm actually in the same boat as Jeff. I have to get approval. My wife travels for work on occasion, and there's a chance she might be traveling in that vicinity of time, so I have to make sure that it works with her schedule.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can't, yeah, I can see that. So hopefully it'll be the 4 of us going down. That'll be fun.
I would love to get to go. I'm hoping I get to go. But
Same here. It looks super fun.
This is the first time I'll actually even be in Nebraska, for crying out loud, let alone down at Bug Eater.
You're not missing much. No offense, Nebraska.
Omaha's nice. Come on, I hear
It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite thing.
Well, all right. So I was born and raised in Nebraska. So
I know you were.
let's be careful here with where we're going.
I've honestly only ever driven through Nebraska once, so I don't have much perspective on it. I just know it was a very boring drive on that freeway.
Honestly, that's all you got to do. If you drive through it once, and you've pretty much seen what's worth seeing. So
yeah, you're like, woohoo,
there are
all
some
right.
exceptions, but yeah. It's exactly what you would expect from the space in between the interesting parts of the country. So
yeah, I mean, it's just a bunch of corn.
Yeah. Now with the campaign day coming up, now there's 2 of us that are Axes and 2 of us that are allies. So we might have to put a little podcast wager or something in the works to make sure that Rick is sufficiently motivated to do well.
I'm already out. Seriously, if you looked at the teams that are weighted, man, we're in trouble, Dale. Like, we don't have a shot.
How are they weighted? Which ones are you talking about?
All right, you want me to go read you the list here? Because I'm not going to read the list. You have some fairly good players on your side. I'm not saying we don't have some good players, but I feel like they might be weighted a little on the Allies side. I'm going to play anyway. And
no, I saw the list. I was grateful. I wasn't going to have to go up against John Stentz at any point.
Right. That was the first name on the list that I saw. I'm like, crap.
You know, I did tell Jacob I'll switch hit. I mean, I can play either side here, so maybe I'll have to switch across and save your bacon.
That would be nice, but I don't know who we'd get rid of. It'll be fun regardless, and who knows what the plan is and how it works. We have no idea what exactly his plan is for all of that stuff. So I think it'll be an interesting day of hopefully lots of fun. It'll be fun regardless. All the guys on the ally side I would love to play against. So whether or not I'm going to win, I'll still have fun. So
I think we'll do fine. Even the folks on the waiting list are great guys. So I think it's just going to be a great time. That'll be good. We're still going to win, Rick. Have faith, man. There's the master plan, the Axie master plan.
No,
We'll
you
get
got
it.
3 allies sitting on the waiting list, and you've only got, I think Paul's your only Axis player on the waiting list.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Nick's out there on the waiting list. He's a great
Yep.
guy to play with. A couple of the other folks. So I think, at the very least, cons afterward will be really good. So.
Yes.
I'm
that.
sure we'll have a summary for that. As long as they don't come down with that black plague the night before again, that should be just fine.
Please don't.
Oh God, that was horrible.
All right. I think we've covered all of our kind of like recent news. I don't know if we have anything more to talk about with Adepticon. I don't think we're shockingly not very well prepared for it.
Not a surprise. Hey, remember, Rick, he wants our list 3 weeks ahead of time, so probably end of this week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just actually going to bring that up. I think they'll tie into our topic later as far as I haven't even really sat down and wrote a list yet, let alone talk to Jesse about what the heck we can do with it.
I was actually just looking at models I could buy to get to use in the list. I only have one.
Rather than looking at your painted stuff and going, okay, I could put these together, you're like, what can I buy so I can paint so I can play it?
No, I only have. There's one particular model that I'd actually be interested in buying and painting. I'll talk to you about it later. I don't want to blow any secrets beforehand.
Your Enigma machine? You're going to paint up your Enigma machine?
Yes, the Germans had that, didn't they? It's in a secret section
so
on
did the
the
US.
Warlord. Are we getting into Conflict 47?
It was the British, actually. We should make sure that we give credit where it's due in that regard.
Good
Fair
point.
enough. All right. Well, so a recent book came out. Pat's been calling it the Normandy book all week. It's actually the Battle of the Bulge book. And I think we're gonna briefly talk about it. I don't know if Jeff, if you want to give us kind of a rundown and kind of talk about some things, because I actually haven't read it yet.
Sure. I have only gone cover to cover once on it, so this might not be the greatest review ever. But let me start from the top and say, if you like World War II, late war, buy this book immediately, because it's awesome. This is everything I was hoping the new campaign books were going to be. It's got flavorful scenarios that are tied to historical situations. It's got units specific to the battle. I'm not 100% clear if all of these units can be used in generic reinforced platoons or not, but if they can, 2 thumbs up for me on that. The history in it is actually excellent. They have lots of good little stories that talk about the certain battles. And again, the specifics on the new units, like you get the Panther Ersatz M10 is in there, which is a fan favorite. That's when the Germans took a Panther tank and kind of dressed it up to so it would look like an M10 tank destroyer in profile, which is a neat little trick, so that you kind of had to get close to it to know that it wasn't actually an American tank. So good on them. I think there's a couple specific units we want to talk about later, so maybe I'll get to those in a minute. But the overall impression of this book, excellent. Just excellent, and it makes me really hopeful for the future quality of campaign books.
So I have a
one
quick question.
Side note I had in there. Oh, go ahead, Dale.
And this might work into what Pat's going to ask. I'm not sure, but previous to this book, there were the Army books that came out, and then like theater books. Is that right? Is it different? Is there a shift that Warlord is doing now in regards to how they're producing new content, or is this just the same thing in a different package?
I feel more like, I'm trying to think of a good way to put this, that the older campaign books kind of feel like a first draft, like this is our first attempt at it, and this kind of feels like a final draft, so to speak. It's put together. I feel the flow of the book is better. It seems more well put together. There are more units that add a specific flavor to the particular campaign. There's actually a whole extra new army list in here for the late war Free French, which is awesome. We've been waiting for that for a long time. So yeah, I think this is just a better quality production. How about that?
So is this more like drilling down into like a specific point in time? Weren't the theater books like kind of bigger in scope in regards to what they covered? So this is more of, okay, so I'm assuming that there was a book that the Battle of the Bulge was included in one of the theater books, but maybe this is just taking an opportunity for us to drill down and really look at this particular famous battle and kind of just dive into it with a lot more detail.
Yes,
Okay?
that is exactly how I would describe it. Yeah, the old one was D-Day to Berlin, I think. I can't remember the exact
Battleground
name.
Europe.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the Battleground Europe, and the subtitle I think is D-Day to Berlin.
You are correct.
But yeah, so that will cover. I mean, that of course that covers the entire, June '44 to May of '45, and this is very specific to the Battle of the Bulge. So it's just December and January and early February of '44 to '45. So yeah, it's much more focused and specific, so they can really grab something and expand it out, and you can get in depth with the battle itself.
Oh, okay. Very cool. All right, thanks.
Yeah, they had. Whereas the other books were like doing kind of covered campaigns and brought in other lists, like the one the Empire in Flames kind of brought in, like you could have a list for China and other ones that weren't represented in the main books, and they kind of covered larger scale operations. Whereas this one, like Jeff said, it's like 2 months it's covering, and there's specific battles they're actually talking about instead of operations and stuff like that. But the other theater books also did introduce new units too. And the other thing I was going to bring up is there is a couple units in the book that they actually specified that these unit or this type of equipment can only be used in this. And then of course they give the nod, unless your mate's okay with it, you can go ahead and put it whatever you want to. But I think from a tournament standpoint, those type of things will be taken on a case-by-case basis and not necessarily included in the reinforced platoon, with a couple of exceptions, which I think we're actually going to go ahead and cover here in a bit.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't know if if it's been determined whether or not any of the stuff is actually available outside of the book. I know in all the other books that everything that's in them has actually been allowed elsewhere. Basically, gets added to the reinforced platoon stuff, so you're able to use it for the most part. I think if I understand correctly.
Warlord had errata like the first several, and they actually put out like a new units errata, which then made all of those acceptable. If they do that again with this book, that remains to be seen, but they haven't as of this far. And there are a couple of notes just in reading through some of the new units, like the rifle-mounted grenades, for example. They actually specify that this was used at this time of the war, not really, and only by these 4 countries. Obviously, the ones involved in the Battle of the Bulge, which were Germany, American, French, and Britain, I believe it was. And they actually say that, I'm sure other armies had this, so if you can find someone who can do some history, otherwise you can just put in one, but this is really designed to be used in this book with these scenarios. That's, at least for that one piece of equipment, that's what I had saw.
Gotcha. And by the way, no wonder the Germans lost. It was 3-on-1. I can't understand. This isn't a fair fight.
Nice.
Are you upset that the Germans lost?
Not really. I mean, no, not at all. But anyway.
Let's also not forget the Russians are kind of carrying all the water for us there. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, the Russians did do a fair amount of work. That is not. Well, I think that is kind of often forgotten in history, but that's
this side of the pond. It is, yeah.
Correct. Well, we barely remember World War II in general in this country at this point. So.
No, I don't. Maybe not. I guess for me, the big thing was obviously everything I learned in school was very from a historical perspective, was very pro-America, and so it was interesting to find out that there's this whole other great big world that a lot of stuff happens that the Americans don't necessarily have much to do with. So.
Yeah, that's probably a fair statement even today in schools. Well, but that's kind of probably getting a little too political for our podcast. But so let's talk about the few units that we saw in the book that we think are across the board going to be allowed. We'll see what happens, what Warlord decides. But let's talk about the chaplain, because I think the chaplain is one of the 2 units that I found super intriguing in the book. I haven't read it all yet, but these are things that I've seen, and I'm like, wow, this seems like it could be really awesome. And I think it could change, list building or the meta at least to some extent. Who's got the rules for chaplain? Who can hear me?
I got the rules for chaplain. I just I was ready for intelligence officer. You threw me for a loop. I had to
Oh,
check
sorry,
my
I went
head.
out of order on the outline. I'm sorry.
God, you
Yeah,
gotta
you
look
got
at
me
the
flipping
outline.
through the book too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what page it is because I always get the Kindle version of these, so I can always have them in one spot. But the chaplain is a single model, 20 points in experience, 25 regular, 30 vet. Don't know if we want to give that information boldly out or not. You can
Yeah,
raise it
probably not.
later.
But cheap order dice.
Cheap order dice. He shouldn't come with a weapon, but you can give him a pistol for a point if you really want to. But he shouldn't, air quote, not have a weapon. He's an HQ choice, so he's 0-1 to any army. You can't have more than one. He's got a self-defense, like I said. Really, only if if someone charges him is the only time he can actually fight back, basically. Including if you had a pistol, he can fire on them beforehand. But the big thing that he has is for his order dice. Any friendly unit within 6 inches, he can roll a d6, and it's -1 if he's inexperienced, +1 if he's a vet. So basically, at a 4 up, he can remove a pin from a unit within 6 inches of him. Pretty cool mechanic wise.
Yeah, again, cheap order dice. And a cool rule to boot. I think is kind of a cool little addition to every army.
It's really good flavor, I think, for the army list. I mean, these guys were out there doing their job under fire, and so it's pretty awesome they finally made rules to include them in an army.
I would arguably take him over a medic if it was available anywhere. I think it seems to play a bigger role more often, especially you got better odds
Equal
than
point
a medic.
cost.
Yeah, and
Well,
it's about the same.
it's proactive versus reactive. Medics always, oh, crap happened. Wait, I have a chance to undo some of the crap that happened. Whereas this, if you got a unit heavily pinned down, you just, get him within 6 inches, and he's got, we'll say, a 50% chance to get one of those pins off. And let me tell you, the number of times I've missed my order checks by one, huge.
Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome.
There's a couple of things about this that I like. First of all, I think it's really neat or interesting. Um, so Warlords put out this unit choice, which um, it sounds like it's available to all the armies, and it's for a unit that it makes sense is there, with interesting rules, but it's I think it's the first thing that I've seen where they've added something that really maybe shifts things a little bit and gets all of us to look at our lists maybe in a new or interesting way, which I think is a huge deal because that means that Warlord is actually thinking about, okay, so what can we do to change up what our players are looking at or how they're putting their lists together, which I think is really cool because that actually you know, gives this weight behind the company, knowing that it's still interested in its game, it's still trying new and interesting things for the players, which is just great for us. The other thing that I like about it is that it gives us the opportunity to maybe do some kind of interesting modeling, or I can look at the war in a whole new way. Were there any famous chaplains or something like that, and it kind of gives my lists or my historical armies that I put together a little bit, some extra legs and stuff like that. So it's just another little wrinkle that we as players can kind of, just I'm actually really excited about this. Not just because of the rules, which I think are interesting, and there's a lot we can actually dig into on how when do you use that order dice? Do you use it early? Do you use it late? How does it impact the game? Early turns, late turns, that kind of stuff. But just from the aspect that Warlord is thinking about this, they're sitting there going, what can we do to make things interesting and fresh and keep things kind of going forward? So big, two thumbs up for me. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah, everything you just said totally makes sense to me. I think it's going to blow your mind a little bit more now that we go into the intelligence officer, because I think the intelligence officer is the other one that we all kind of looked at, and I'm like, wow, this one's really good. Not a cheap order dice, unfortunately, but gives you some pretty cool rules if one of you guys wants to kind of give a rundown, maybe not point cost, but at least a rundown of what's going on there. Don't everyone rush at once.
Jeff, you want to take that one?
I was going to let you have it. I'm having a little trouble finding it in my book. Sorry.
Okay. Let's see. Well, I just successfully looked up the chaplain again, and while I'm actually there, I did see one other little note on there. It does specify that not all nations or countries at this time actually had chaplains, so feel free to do your research if your particular army had it. And not all of them particularly use them, and they are also not allowed, and they list several campaigns. They only list them, of course, for the 4 armies that are actually highlighted. Again, Great Britain, France, US, and Germany. So it's while it is from a mechanic point available to all reinforced platoons, it's maybe it might take a little research. I don't know how many which different armies considered their spiritual leader that would be in battle with them. So just a side note on that. So the intelligence officer, this guy's. I had to do a couple reads to figure out exactly what he was saying. So there's 2 different ways you can get this fellow into your army. And the first one is he adds into your mandatory first or second lieutenant unit. So your first or second lieutenant can have 1 or 2 other we call bodyguards with him, and this intelligence officer for 30 points as a regular can be added into that. So he has to be in that unit in that respect. Now there are some army selectors that allow you to do a unit of troops that will actually have him in it. So there's 2 different ways to put him in there. But I think the big primary function that he has, and here's where I kind of frown on it a little bit, but it makes perfect sense, is once a game you can use his special ability, which you roll a d6. He's modified the same way I did the chaplain, -1 experience, +1 for veteran. But basically on a 4-up, he gets to choose the first activation. This has to be done at the very beginning of the turn. He can say, all right, I'm going to take my order dice, and I'm going to activate the tank that's been sitting there before you blow it up. Kind of cool. Once a game is kind of, it's like, I guess if they'd made it more than that, it would have been overpowering. But once a game seems that, at the point cost of just adding him in there, and now you're talking, okay, so your intelligence officer and your lieutenant are running around as a 2-man unit, because if you put a bodyguard in there, now they lose that modifier to being a small unit, and they have a better chance of being hit. But so that's one way to get it in. They list several other selectors. United States, Britain and France, and Germany can all actually. Oh, Germany may not actually. Yes, they do have a different one. I remember reading later in the back. So very cool. Again, another interesting mechanic they've added in here, and it's interesting how you want to figure out how to put them in your army.
Yeah, actually, something that I just realized while we were looking at, or that you were talking about that, is that it actually has got a very intriguing side effect that I didn't think about until just now. Is if you take a lieutenant with your intelligence officer as your second man, so it's still a small man team, but a sniper shoots at him, he's going to have to make a choice.
The sniper gets to choose. Remember, if
I know,
another unit
but
shoots at him. Oh,
no.
the sniper.
The sniper's going to have to make a choice. Now, is it whether or not I want to kill your lieutenant, or do I want to take that dice away from you? Or do I want to take that opportunity? Yeah. So now all of a sudden that lieutenant choice might be kind of an interesting little. I just realized that actually is going to make it more of a choice than it ever was before. Because if you ever brought a meat shield with your lieutenant, they're going to shoot you're going to kill your lieutenant every time. At least now with an intelligence officer attached. Maybe you would go after the intelligence officer. It's just an interesting thought.
That when you're adding stuff to a unit, they all have to be at the same experience level. So if your officer is regular, that intelligence officer can only be regular.
Right.
As well. So they made a huge point and said it like 3 different ways in the book, so I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Right. So if you want a veteran, because they get a bonus if they're veteran, right? So their dice roll that they make is +1 when you when they become veteran.
They need a 3-up to trigger their ability if they're a veteran.
Does it? So I haven't actually read through it. Does it explain what happens if both of you have intelligence officers?
No, it does not cover that. Not that I saw.
Oh, geez.
Well,
all right.
What are the odds you both want to use it in the exact? It's once a game, so what are the odds you both want to use it in the exact same turn?
There's a lot of times where there's a tank v tank, and you're like, I want my tank to blow your tank up. I want to make sure that happens.
It could also be used as a counterplay, where perhaps perhaps Rick really wants to go first so he can make that play, and then I'm like, well, if I can deny him that first pull, then I can thwart whatever nefarious plan that he has going on. I don't think it says it, but I'm assuming that if you both want to do it, you both roll, and then whoever actually rolls the highest is the one that's successful.
That that makes sense. That there's nothing in here that says simultaneous trigger on opposite
Right.
sides or anything like that.
Yeah, they'll have to FAQ that if it actually gets
Yeah.
introduced into like a
Certainly.
reinforced platoon scenario.
And
Warlord's
so,
not, as most of these game makers aren't notorious for thinking of the whereas it's obvious to you and I. We look at it just because they did it, play tested. Maybe it never came up for them, so they didn't think twice about it. Like, what are the odds? They're never going to want to both use them right away.
yeah, it's the German option is slightly different. We don't actually get an extra guy. It's an upgrade that you can purchase to your lieutenant. So
Oh,
Yep, here it is.
interesting.
Here it is. Yep, you're right. And both Britain and France can actually get a unit that has riflemen and the intelligence officer in it instead of just attached. They have both options. Attach him to the first or second lieutenant, or get them in a unit with other riflemen.
Dang, that really makes my lieutenant even more of a target if I have that upgrade. I'd rather have it be a separate guy, but I'll take whatever I can get. That intelligence thing, I don't know how many times that actually, the next dice that gets pulled is the one that I need to be mine, and it never actually is mine. It's kind of the way the way I roll.
It seems like every single time you need it to be yours, it's not yours, and when you don't care, it's yours.
Right, exactly.
You're also going to have to remember, Rick, you get a chance at it, but I'm pretty sure you only get a chance at it. And if you don't make the roll, that's his one use of the ability.
No, I understand. I mean, I understand it's kind of a gamble, but it's still just an interesting new rule. I love that they're still adding units to the game or new rule sets to the game. I think that'll help move the game forward in some respect. It'll change the meta at a minimum, right? I don't know that it'll stop people from bringing snipers because I think snipers are still pretty good. But
I have yet to have one of my snipers kill anything in all 4 games I've played them in, so I can't say that I find them very effective at this point.
it wasn't your sniper that killed. No, you're on the other side. Never mind. I was gonna say someone's sniper killed Jeff's artillery piece.
Yeah,
that
that
was an
was
exceptional damage from a mortar, I believe.
Yeah, medium.
Oh,
mortar
that
drop
was a
right on.
mortar. That was a mortar, right?
Yeah, and that was an
That-
exceptional damage, which
that those stinking sniper mortars.
yeah, imagine the scope they have in those things.
Oh man, that would be awesome.
I think to the sniper thing, it's I mean, if I'm thinking competitively, it's 100% a 1+ in every single
Well,
every
we'll,
single list they put together.
We'll talk about that in about 2 minutes here. So I think that's a kind of nice little segue. Is there anything else about Battle of the Bulge that we want to talk about?
Volumes, but not that I'm ready to talk about.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll probably get into it further in another episode. We'll probably dedicate a whole episode to the Battle of the Bulge book. I think it was interesting. I follow the Bolt Action group on Reddit, and one of the things I actually saw was that the author posted into one of the random topics regarding it, and he said that he was unaware that the second edition book was being written while he was writing Battle of the Bulge, and they published version 2 of Bolt Action without even actually talking to him about the Battle of the Bulge book. So how do you guys feel that works out? Do you feel like it's still pretty good? Does it reconcile with version 2?
Near as I can tell, everything seems to jive just fine. So
Okay, I just thought that was a really interesting little snippet from him. Was like, yeah, they didn't even bother telling me that they were making a new version of the rules. So I was like, what is going on here?
Nothing stands out. Yeah, same. I glanced through all the new units and the things that they added in there, and nothing fell into that new edition hole or was grossly outplayed by anything else. So maybe that's why they didn't tell him. They knew it wasn't going to be a
Yeah,
problem.
well, apparently maybe the whole time that he's talking about his stuff, and they're like, yeah, no worries, it'll be fine.
No worries.
Don't
we saw
worry,
what
it'll
you're
be
doing.
fine. Yeah, we know what you're doing.
We have our
They'll-
intelligence officer over your shoulder.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So Dale's sending me a note that says we need a break. I kind of concur. I'm 2 beers into our podcast here, so I actually need a little bathroom break in here. So we'll be back in about 3 minutes. Hopefully you guys are liking the music that we're playing in the middle here. I know I'm thoroughly enjoying finding all this kind of cool World War II era stuff. I haven't shared with the guys yet the new opening, but it's going to be the permanent opening now. So hopefully you guys are liking it. We'll be back in 3 minutes. All right, guys. I'm going to be back in like 2. I just got to pee.
Sounds good. I gotta chase the dog away.
All right. See you in a sec.
Anyone make it back?
Anyone back yet?
Yup.
Was all that noise you or somebody else on here too?
Oh, which noise? I hit
All right,
mute.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
I'm back now as well.
All right.
Wow.
Hey, the gang's all here.
Perfect timing.
Freaking pug was going crazy.
They do that.
She's like trying to beat in the door down here to my office. It's crazy.
Is that how she got her nose?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Have you seen the Chugs, the Chihuahua Pug mix?
Oh my God. Yes.
Dear God.
I think they're actually. I kind of I kind of got suckered right into those. So
It's hard to say no to those faces.
Hey, did you guys
Okay,
get all
so-
your bio stuff into Rick for the website?
No.
no,
Yeah,
Am I the only one?
probably
you are the only one. Of course I beat you because I
Well,
actually
I hope
have
so.
all my stuff.
What kind of bio stuff do you want?
You want to
Uh,
just send him what I sent you? Is that kind of what you're looking for?
yeah, I mean, as much as you want to,
I think I'm going to write mine like an online dating service. How I would describe myself at eHarmony.
if you go look at what I
Did
wrote on,
mine like resume style, like, hey, this is what I did, so I can do this stuff.
I'll just put a link to my Tinder profile. What?
if you
Swipe
really
left.
want to.
Which way do you swipe if you don't want the person?
I don't know.
Right, I think.
I think that's the entirety of my bio. Swipe right.
I forwarded you what I sent to Rick. If you guys, that's just what I did. If that helps,
It might-
If it looks stupid, whatever.
It might be too long. That's my only concern, given
Really?
the space. Yeah.
I didn't think I had enough stuff in there. Okay.
You have plenty of stuff in there. You have your entire. Well, I did ask for a bio. I guess I get what I deserve.
Right.
I don't. I have not given it a look. I haven't plugged it in yet, so I don't know how. It's considerably longer than what I wrote. If you want it to be that long, we can make it happen. I just have to figure out how we're going to make it work.
Well, let me know how it looks if it needs to be shorter. I can.
Have you looked at it since I put your pictures in here? So
No.
Jeff, I need a picture of you.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough call, but I'll get you something.
If not, I'm just going to go to your Facebook profile and grab something off of that.
That would also work.
Yeah, my bio is going to be swipe right, so you're set on me.
It's just going to say swipe right.
Yeah, that's all.
Did you actually do a Google search on whether or not
That's a good point. I'm going to do that actually right now. Which way do you swipe to turn?
how to use Tinder?
I think that's a different podcast.
It might be. You know what? It's great that we're having this conversation now, though, because it's perfect opening banter.
What's our website again?
Great way to meta the conversation there, Rick. Jesus.
It looks like it's swipe left. What does it mean?
I can
swipe
cut that
left?
out, no problem.
Swipe left is bad. What is our website again? I can find our Facebook page, no problem, but I can't. Where's the actual website?
The Snafu Podcast.com.
Swipe left. Yeah, swipe left. I'm swipe
So,
left.
but if you want to go check out what the website's going to be in the near future, put /test/index.php.
I don't
sounds like
understand
work,
those things.
Jesus.
Okay, here's how this is going to work. I'm going to go there. I'm going to copy it.
Okay.
I'm going to go to my email,
Okay.
and
So
I
far-
will
so far
send
these
it
words
to you.
I understand. Now you're talking my language. Short, simple steps.
There you go. It's on its way to your inbox.
Be a magical interweb.
I'll be sure to put my profile on my carrier pigeon and send it your way.
Great.
My title should be Winner Winner Chicken Dinner. I'm sticking with that.
It's winter chicken dinner, but that's too long.
I just
So-
gave you a title of strategist.
I'll make yours winter chicken dinner, but I'll put the dinner part in the beginning of your bio part.
Okay, that's good.
Like mine's host with the most facial hair. So, because that actually is true.
Most facial hair? Do you have a lot of facial hair?
No, I don't.
Oh, that makes sense then.
The website
Especially-
looks good. Looks real good.
Especially given my my amazing monkey
The
tail. All right.
Jesus, if you could hear this, there's like a Pugtona 500 going on upstairs.
A Pugtona?
Dude, that little dog can run fast, and she does circles around the living room and dining room.
Oh, you cropped the book out of the picture.
I didn't crop anything out of the picture. It's the shape of the fucking picture.
Oh.
I didn't have a choice. It's like it covers. Yes, it's there. If you see it, it's there. It ain't cropping all the way out.
Right.
Would you rather I have the book or your face?
The book, obviously.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna go with too.
if
I should have sent you the other picture in that case. I thought the book was like, hey, look, this guy actually reads the fucking thing. He must be great.
if
Yeah,
you
you know
guys
when
are
I
going to
s-
do color pictures, I can colorize mine again. I thought the black and white looked like better with how the rest of the website's set up.
Well, Jeff's picture's really awesome right now.
Oh hell, you can at least see my face.
It's up to you. Did you black and white yours?
Yeah, black and white in mine.
Oh, I thought it was actually black and white when you sent it to me, but it's up to you. It doesn't really matter. I could black and white all of our pictures if you wanted me to, but I'm kind of okay with color.
Okay, I'll leave mine black and white. I'm
Okay, so why is there a third episode up here? Am I stupid? What's this shit?
It's episode 2. I was building it to plan for episode 3. So I'll release it. I'll release this new website with episode 3.
Oh, okay.
Thank God you're producing this, because this shit's all over my head.
Yeah, I got it under control.
Hey, I was just gonna tell you, Rick. The picture you're using up here with the guys getting off the boat on D-Day here.
Yeah.
I've got a much better when we're out in those smoke clouds. You can see the two AT-ATs moving up the shore.
That's our Conflict 47 one.
No, I think you could actually do that like a Where's Waldo thing with each release. You could put in little things in the photos. I mean, it'd take a lot of work,
historical
but
inaccuracies.
it would be super cool. See if anybody ever caught on to it.
Give
Quite
one of those
honest.
digital wristwatch or something.
Yeah, the Casio. They're all wearing Casios.
Had the F-15 flying through.
To be fair, it looks like I'm doing a lot of work to these, but I'm literally making an image, and this website's doing all the work for me. I'm not going to go in and Photoshop each image. I'm cropping it to the size that it requires, and then I'm putting it up. So
Well, if you don't want any credit, we won't give you any.
Yeah, that's fine. You can just lay there. It's fine.
You didn't drink on that one.
I thankfully wasn't, but
Good shit.
so it's funny because I was gonna do this, and then I'm like, so I was in the process of remocking up all of our website, and I'm like, this would be cool, and then I went and searched for podcast templates, and this one was one of the first, and it was like $10 just to buy the code. So I just bought the code. I was like, fuck it. I'm not going to do this all myself. Dale's told me a long time ago, how much is your time worth? And my time was worth way more than $10. So I was like, fuck it. And yeah.
That is not what that hobo on the street said.
Well, his hourly rate is lower than mine.
No. $20 is still $20.
Fair enough.
It was just like $10 for this template, and it looks great. It does what I need it to. It allows embedded play better than that shitty cast player thing. So
Well, once we get our sponsorships rolling in, we'll get that money
Jesus
recouped to you.
Christ.
someday maybe we'll get a sponsor, but we got to be careful how we do that. To Dale's point, I don't want to just whore us out here.
We're gonna sell some dice that'll pay for it.
The ones we're going to end up painting, because that's the only way this is going to happen.
It'll be easier than you think. We'll just have to find a good matte varnish that we can paint
Spray on it or paint on. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
and
well-
I'm going to be ordering one here pretty soon because I hear it's pretty good, and we'll see how it goes.
A matte varnish, a paint on matte varnish.
Yeah, it's by AP. So one of the guys on the Bolt Action Facebook group, he painted up some stuff, and there's these flesh tones, and it's awesome. And it says AP is the name of the company, and so I ordered their whole flesh set, and then apparently they have one of the best paint on matte varnishes as well. So I'm gonna give that a shot too. So
Solid.
Cool.
yeah, we'll see
All
how
right.
it goes.
Okay, well, I think we've bantered enough. I think it's time to get back to the episode here. Well, welcome back. Hopefully you like the music. I don't even know what it's going to be yet, but we'll do that all in post editing. So our second topic of the night, and I think this is pretty cool that we're actually getting people responding to us at this point. We actually had a listener write into us. I'll put in parentheses. He's actually one of our friends, so it actually, he's looking for some advice. So I'm gonna
downplay it. Way to downplay it.
Got to downplay it. It's a humble brag. a little bit here.
Like we kind of set the guy up. I swear I did not give him any money to put that question on our Facebook page.
I don't think we did. I don't think anyone paid him any money for this, but it's still a valid question either way. So I'm just going to read you verbatim what he wrote, so we can respond to this, because I think it is a very important question, and I think it's something that we can cover we've been doing ourselves quite frequently lately. So Rocky writes us on Facebook, "Hey guys, listen to the first 2 episodes. Great job, boys! Exclamation point! Exclamation point!" There you go. See, now we're getting back into the bragging part a little bit. Just a thought for part of an episode that might help noobs like me. So I think going into list building for a tournament versus a campaign style would really help if, Jesus, I can't read his handwriting.
How many beers did you have?
1.5. All right.
Also,
they're talls.
If it's a Facebook post, how can you not read his handwriting?
It wasn't his handwriting. It's his writing style. Hey guys, listen to. All right. So I was thinking.
Is it like Comic Sans?
No, it's just the way he's writing, and it's like I get 4 words a line. It's just give me a break here, guys. Come on now. So I think going into list building for a tournament versus a campaign style would really help, because I'm never really sure what I can take and when, so I decided to choose a theater to go to the campaign Jeff is running. Just a thought, boys, and again, great job on the podcast. I usually learn some new rules. I think what Rocky's really asking in this question is what should I do when I'm playing in a tournament? He kind of goes both ways on this question, but I think really what it comes down to is when you're prepping for a tournament or you're writing a tournament list, what should you do? And I think that's kind of really what it is. He's kind of getting stuck in the historical relevance of our campaign, or being stuck in certain year groups for the campaign. And I think he's really looking at how do I build a tournament friendly list. So I think that's really what it comes down to.
I also think there's a small part of it here, because I struggled early on too, just trying to work out in the rules how do I put together a list to play. In the previous games, it's like, okay, you need 1 HQ choice, you need these many core, these many specials, these many rares. And so when I got to the back of my Imperial Japanese book, there's these theater selectors, and then there's this bit about a reinforced platoon. And so there's all of this information, and I didn't really exactly know how really within the rules am I supposed to build the list, whether it's for a campaign that Jeff was running, or if I'm going to go to a tournament. How does a player who's never built a list before know exactly what he's supposed to bring?
Right, because most people don't own all the books right away. So a lot of those theater selectors aren't available unless you have the campaign book that goes with it, or that specific theater book. So I think, so good point.
It's a simple RTFB. Read the book. In each army book, the very beginning, they actually tell you what a reinforced platoon is. And then you get to the end with the theater, if you actually read, not just get... It is overwhelming when you see all these headings and stuff, but to actually read the flavor text, it actually tells you this is what was available at this particular type of the war, or at this particular battle. These are the type of troops that were there. You can pick from these. So, it's not laid out pristinely, but it is... Right away, they talk about what the reinforced platoon is: 1 lieutenant, 2 infantry, plus 0 to 3 infantry, 0 to 1 captain, 0 to 1 medic, and it goes through all of that. And then they do very specifically spell out that these are during this time period, during this point, this place in the war where this type of battle took place. Here's the troops that kind of fought it. You can pick from these. So that's what the theater selection is going through.
So if it's just the reinforced platoon, and it says I can take an infantry unit, can that be any infantry unit from the book? Yep. Can it be a veteran unit, or do I need to have? Do they all have to start as regular? It's just whatever's in the book, it falls into a specific category, and then that's the qualification.
Think of the reinforced platoon as the all button, include all, which means you can take anything from any period of the war, of any battle of the war, anything that country ever had that fought in World War II is available in the reinforced platoon.
Oh, all right. Okay,
Correct.
So that That makes sense.
So min-maxing is much more capable in a reinforced platoon versus a theater book, because obviously in theater books you're only limited to certain, or
You're
theater
limited.
selectors, you're limited by what
What was
the
historically
era
there?
is. Yeah,
What was
exactly.
historically there at that?
And because I'm a complete scrub at this, what do you mean by min-maxing? Is that a bad thing?
I don't know if it's a bad thing. It's making the most efficient choices for your entire army. I don't know how else you want to describe min-maxing, but
I think
essentially
I don't think that applies as much to this when they break down a really well structured point buy system that everything goes into. I think that min maxing capability kind of goes away. I think that min maxing is a term that's more associated back when we were doing Warhammer Fantasy Battles, where you could, I've got this much rare. I need, because those rares were that much more powerful than the regular choice. I needed to spend all my points into this section to try and get the most out of these minimum points.
Okay.
Right? That's what you're thinking, Dale?
Yeah, I mean, it's a term that we're relatively familiar with, and we use it quite a bit. I don't know who might be listening, and they're like, well, what do you mean by min-maxing? But okay, I think that's a fair description.
Yeah, I mean, and to some extent, I would agree that min-maxing is pretty limited in what this is, but you're going to pick the best choice for every slot, right? So you're going to pick whatever you think is the most efficient infantry. So you might pick, like for Germans, they might pick all vets with all assault rifles, and then they might pick a tank that's totally non-relevant to your infantry choices you just made. That's what I call min-maxing in bolt action, right?
So you're building for performance and not necessarily to replay a story or a particular.
Correct. You're taking absolutely zero historical relevance into what you're doing.
It's all about performance of individual units within the context of the game.
Right. That's kind of what I'm looking at it.
That's why you see a lot of veteran selections in tournaments, because they do the reinforced platoon.
That was going to be my question. So the reinforced platoon is what kind of allows us as players to do that, to take advantage of, if we've collected something that we really love to play and it's also, killer on the tabletop, then the reinforced platoon lets us have fun with our best toys. Okay.
True. And it's not to say that there aren't probably some circumstances where, some of that stuff happened. The war was pretty big and a lot of things happened during it. I'm sure some of that stuff happened, but historical relevance seems to get thrown out the window a little bit when it comes to the reinforced platoon, at least in my mind. So, go ahead.
I was going to say, to a degree, I'm gonna slightly disagree with the take on that. Merely in so much as that you can make a perfectly balanced historical list out of a generic reinforced selector. It just allows you to play with all the toys. So the way I look at it is you use the reinforced selector when you're going to be playing a game. And by that I mean like a pickup game, or this is a game to me with miniatures on a table. And you use a theater selector when you're playing a historical game, in my mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not disagreeing with that. I from what I've seen so far, I feel like the min-maxing is pretty limited. It's like you said, to Pat's point, is that the point buy is almost identical across the board for everyone. So nobody has something that seemingly is way overpowered comparative to the rest. I think that's kind of one of the positives to the game. Outside of maybe some army rules, but that's another story.
I was going to say, I think that's very true for your main core rulebook armies and your main, what we think of the traditional main combatants of World War II. You're going to run into some problems when you get into the smaller factions. Poland, France, maybe not Romania the way our Romanian player plays them, but a traditional Romanian army, they're going to have next to nothing to deal with a late war Tiger II, or God forbid someone actually bought a mouse, or an IS-3 or an IS-6. You can't really even dent that with anything in the France and the Allies book, or the Romanian, short of a German 88 in the Romanian army. So there is some opportunity for imbalance, but it's not terrible.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. All right. So maybe you guys can answer this question then. Like, when you're looking at building a tournament list, what are your kind of ground rules or like your guidelines per se? Like, what are the things that you look for and say, here are the things that I really think are going to perform the way that I think they should? Or, you know, my maybe I'll give an example of this. Like my particular rule is that I like to shoot for at least a dice for every 100 points. So if we're playing in 1,000 point tournament, I want at least 10 dice, and I think that's kind of a standard. That's not even just like that's not my thing. That's just like a kind of a standard bolt action thing. What else do you guys look for when you're building lists for a tournament play?
I always try and the dice. What you're saying makes sense, give or take, plus or minus one or two. But for every 250 points that you're playing at, I like to try and get an infantry squad, minimum 8-man. I try to max them at 10 if I can. If I were countries that had to go higher than 10 for maxing, I don't know if I'd do that. So at 1,000 points, I want to try and make sure I have 4 infantry squads, not weapon teams, but actual squads that can have some hardiness and actually stay in the fight a little bit to try and take objectives, or at least put pressure and keep presence on equal halves of the board as you're moving up. And I always try and make sure I've got something that can deal with armor, maybe not necessarily very well, but something that has that option. Britain and Russia are two armies that actually have access to a light howitzer, which has 2 types of weaponry. It both functions as a light howitzer, which is a 2-inch template plus 2 pen, and also has an anti-tank round, which is a plus 4 pen, which is respectable. It'll take care of a light tank 8+ pretty easily. It might struggle a little bit, look for a good side shot on like a Sherman style medium tank 9+, but then the heavier ones, well, everyone's screwed anyway unless you bring a 17-pounder.
So I have a question for you, Pat. Then, how many options do you think? Let's say at 1,000 points, and I don't know if that's relative or realistic at a tournament level, but at 1,000 points, how many options would you want or try to include to deal with armor? Is it just one, or would it be better to have more than one?
Much like NASA, I agree with the redundancy level. If one's worth taking, 2 gives you a chance of 1 happening. So I always try and have 2 options that are at least at a plus 4 pen value to deal with artillery. So meaning, I'll take my anti-tank howitzer. I'm fortunate in having a piece that has the versatility there, and then try and get something else that has a chance with that plus 4, plus 5, whether that be my actual armor on the board, whether I'm putting a tank or an armored car or whatever it is that has that capability. But I always want to make sure I have 2 chances to deal with a tank, because 1 tank on the board, granted, it's only going to have 6 times to do stuff in a given game on average. That can really mess with your things, and it can certainly take care of it. It can certainly set up a lot of problems if you can't at least get some pins on it as a minimum.
Sure. Okay.
I agree with Pat on that one. I almost always try and make sure to have at least 2 answers for armor. Yeah, whether or not it's even my armor. So typically, I count my tank. I usually take a Panzer III or a Panzer IV.
Panzer
Yeah, to try and answer for it, at least to try and make sure that I have some coverage for armor.
So Jeff,
good
I'm
options
interested.
For anti-tank. Oh, makes me sick.
I'm interested to get your take on that, because I think the few times that we've talked about this, I feel like you've indicated that maybe your army kind of is weak in that regard of dealing with enemy armor. Is that the case, or not so much? And if it is, then what do you do? How do you feel about dealing with armor?
So my answer to armor is France, at any point in the war, the heaviest anti-tank gun we carry is a medium anti-tank gun, which is plus 5, which is respectable, but an armor 10 heavy tank, I can only glance it to the front and I have to be under half range. So generally, my answer to armor is less about its destruction and more about its neutralization. So I will use my free light artillery piece or medium on occasion, and my goal isn't to kill the tank so much as to take it out of the fight via pins or the lucky glancing hit to immobilize it or jam its turret off in another direction. So my goal is any kind of heavy weapon I can put pins on it with, I'm going to try to shoot at it, get it 3 or 4 pins, so he has to burn the turn either rallying or failing order tests, and then not worry about it for as much of the game as possible.
Okay. Yeah, my limited experience, I just ignore the tanks right now. And,
But that's because I have a tendency to not pass order tests every time I put the Matilda on the board.
yeah, against the Matilda it worked out. Against the Sherman this last
It's a standing
game,
Matilda, not a waltzing
it
Matilda.
worked out
I guess.
okay. But I'm just I'm trying to see if I can get by with just ignoring the armor, and it's been okay, I guess.
Yeah, it really depends if you can ignore the armor or not, and it depends how confident your opponent is with his armor. Some people play armor very cautiously. Some people play armor very cavalierly. If you realize your opponent is light on armor penetration, so they don't have anything really heavy, you should use your tank as a shock vehicle and try to inflict maximum casualties with it, because there's almost nothing they can do to you at that point.
Having been on both sides of that, I can say without a doubt, if you have a tank and your opponent has nothing to deal with it, it's going to wreak havoc. As long as you're pointing it at your opponent and running things over, it's going to be bad times for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep in mind that even troops without anti-tank weapons can assault tanks, but they can't assault you if their chances are poor if you've moved, and they can't do it if you ran. So if you run to destroy these units, have a couple of pins on it, that's pretty effective tactics for that stuff with a tank.
Yeah, they still got a pretty slim chance. I'd take my chances running at units that have
check at -3 plus whatever else they got going on.
Yeah.
But if they got anti-tank weapons, granted, most times it's a 20-point upgrade to a unit, and I honestly have never done that yet. So
it's very seldom, unless that's going to be some of your answers for other tanks, right? If that's going to be some of your anti-armor, it's not the greatest option for anti-armor, but
it's a very last resort sort of thing. Like,
Yep.
Hey, dude, let's go charge that big metal thing that's been blowing everybody up. Woohoo! Absolutely.
now, of course, I think there might be some circumstances where that might be kind of skewed. I think, like, for instance, as I'm building some American stuff now, I'm looking at Rangers, and I think Rangers with anti-tank options are pretty good, because they're going to be up halfway up the board in a lot of games because of their special rules.
You want a really good option? Take a bazooka team with a Jeep in reserve.
Yeah, that's pretty good too.
That bazooka at the range 24 makes my Piat team look like just fledgling. I mean, it's like me standing versus the Rock, for crying out loud, you know? The Piat is very good. It has the exact same damage capability, but we've got a 12-inch range.
Yeah, the bazooka is pretty good.
That's terrifying.
So maybe we can go into that a little bit. We're kind of like, we're not necessarily meandering here, but I think this is all kind of important stuff. So, like, if you guys were to look at what you typically, now we haven't played in a lot of tournament play, but we've seen enough of it, and I think we've all built some lists around it. Like, what are the things that you would look at almost any army and say, these are the things that I would take, these are the things I wouldn't take? Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I don't think I would typically, even as a German player, that I would typically try and fit, if I didn't feel like I was limited to what I had painted, bring an MMG. I think like a medium machine gun isn't necessarily cost efficient at 50 points. I think I can find something better to put in that slot.
The trouble with that is you can only have one per squad per platoon.
True.
Like
that's
the Americans,
yeah.
who can get 3. That's actually not too bad of a deal. If you can get dice early on, get them in ambush, you're golden. Those are just fine.
Yeah. Well, so what I was going to say is, like, I almost always bring a mortar, because I feel like mortars are a little bit better buy as far as that anti-infantry, which is kind of what an MMG is supposed to be, right? So a medium machine gun is supposed to be kind of anti-infantry, but it only ever puts one pin on a unit. Whereas I can get a medium mortar, and it'll put D3 pins on a unit and probably kill more guys too while it's at it. So, like, in my perspective, I almost always try and bring a mortar in my reinforced platoons. Is there anything you guys like are like you think our auto includes. I they don't like to, obviously this is a guideline. I think to this we don't necessarily have to go into specific armies, but
Right, we're just talking generally what we are comfortable with putting on the
right.
table. To the mortars, I don't ever anticipate the mortar actually ever hitting anything. What I want the mortar to do is to make something else move. If they've got like an air observer who has to be stationary for the fire order to bring that thing in, I want him to think twice about standing there when just last round I'd started targeting in on him at a 6 plus. Now this turn I got a 5 plus. Does he want to take that chance to call in that airstrike and stand still and me hit him in a 5 plus, possibly a 4 plus in the next turn, or does he need to move? So I always think of mortars as same thing with snipers. You know, does he want to stay there to get the good sniper shot, or do I want to force him to get out of that position? That's what I think see mortars. I never plan on them hitting anything, especially since they went to version 2 with the smoke, and I'm not very fond of that particular change to the rule. Let's just say that.
It's not your favorite? Yeah, no, I does anyone else have anything that like, or is like, you feel like here are your general guidelines? Like we've kind of like, we've gone through, here's your infantry choices. You typically bring some anti-tank tech or anti-armor tech. And like for me, I always try and bring the mortar just because I feel like it's a good choice.
I I, I mean, if I was putting together, a reinforced platoon for a tournament, I definitely think a sniper would probably end up on my list, just because it seems like the amount of influence that it can put onto the board seems to be pretty significant, and I haven't played with it or against it enough yet to know really how to balance that out or to counter it. Other than, I'm a new player, I've got my sniper, you've got yours, I'm going to try to kill yours before you kill mine. But I'm assuming there's got to be some more nuance to it than just that. So early on for me, at least at this point in time, if I wasn't building for anything other than purely list efficiency, I think a sniper would be something that I would probably put onto the board for sure.
I'm going to be a big proponent of that medium machine gun that you don't like so much, Rick. In addition to what we've already discussed in the mortar, my general theory in list building for a tournament is you want some guns that are going to make the enemy move and some guns that are going to make the enemy not want to move. And the machine gun falls into that latter category, where you put that in a good position and shut down a lane and make it so if they want to come out of that hard cover and advance towards your position or towards an objective, they're going to be eating 4 shots in the face. And the other good thing about a machine gun is that sniper that's hiding in a building, yeah, you're probably not going to kill him with a medium machine gun spray, but you might put a pin on him. And every time you put a pin on that guy, he gets less effective. So I find the medium machine gun to be very valuable in that role.
Okay, well then you and I can chat because I have some grand schemes in mind for for some of that stuff.
Yeah, for the MMG, my only thought for you, Rick, was, just put it on the Opal Blitz. It's like 15 points. That's where I'm putting all my MMGs.
So it's funny because I'm starting to move that direction where, yeah, you're just sticking them on other things because you might as well. It's just the only unfortunate part about that, and it's something that like we kind of already said is when you do that, yeah, it's only 15 points, but it's not an order dice. So you're losing the extra order dice in there to some extent.
Well, you think about it, 50 points for the MMG team, which takes up a spot in your selector, or 15 points to put it onto a transport truck, which already has its own order dice, and makes it much more effective when it's not actually transporting troops. So it's a no-brainer for me.
Transports are really, really easy to be eliminated, though.
Yeah, that's the downfall.
Well, you have to. I mean, you have to know what you're doing, and of course, yeah. I mean, that's the downside of it. But the whole thing. Doing? Yes, and you think about it. Well, snipers are amazing because they can shoot at whatever they want to, and they only ever suffer a -1. If they lose their friend. which lets you shoot at
Or
the other
pins.
sniper in hardcover, yeah, or pins, etc. But the idea is that, well, shoot, snipers are overpowered. Well, if you don't give them anything to shoot at, then that's a lot of wasted points. So, it's always back and forth in that regard. But for me, MMGs on the Opal Blitz is woohoo, lots of fun.
Yeah, the difference with that, though, Dale, you're going to find as we move into more terrain-heavy boards is you can't get that Opal Blitz places that infantry team can go to. So you're never going to be able to dig him into ruins or a bunker or a trench or hard cover unless you're extremely careful with him, which makes it a lot more fragile choice.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it all plays out. For me, it's just shock. Get across the board. Dump your load. Support fire as you get away, and put down those extra pins. So I mean, it'll be interesting. Again, I haven't played a lot, but it sounds like fun to me.
So let me ask this question. So from, putting lists together just simply to learn what those units do and how they do in this situation, are there any units you guys have not played yet that you haven't actually put on the table physically?
Cavalry.
Yeah, I haven't tested cavalry at all yet, and actually I have another unit that I want to test before Adepticon that I find intriguing
Is that part of your big
because
secret?
yeah, I'll let you in on the big secret, and it's not really a big secret. I think a lot of people actually play it. It's the motorcycle mounted machine gun for the Germans. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. For 40 points, you get a regular MMG on a motorcycle that can drive really far, and it's
What?
treated like a
On a road, 48 inches, otherwise 24?
yeah, and it's treated like an armored car with a 6-up soft skinned uh, armor save. So it's ridiculously good for what it is, and it's still an MMG, and it can get a lot farther, and is 10 points cheaper than actually having an MMG on the table. So I don't know why anyone is taking a normal MMG when they could take a motorcycle MMG for 10 points cheaper.
Because it takes an armored car slot.
That's the only, yeah, because then you can't take your Puma.
You got it.
Yep. Well, which in my circumstance, in at Adepticon, I can't really bring the Puma anyway because it doesn't really fit thematically with our French German theme. So
Let's
You
just
know what?
pause on that for a half second that you actually uttered the phrase French-German theme.
What? Is it any different? Is it really that much different than the British-Russian theme?
yeah, exactly. What are we talking about here? You guys were shooting at Germans across from each other, and you basically just didn't shoot at each other. That's all that really happened.
So what are you saying?
You guys didn't even fight together.
Well, no, we didn't fight against each other, though, so that's got to count for an alliance. Friend of my friend is my... enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Isn't that the whole thing goes?
Well,
I'm-
whether they want to talk about it in history or not, there's a good 2 years where Vichy France fought relatively on the same side as the
Well-
Germans. So
That's what I was trying to draw out of you. I knew you had that.
And there were French that came in to try and save Berlin when it was falling. I mean, there's lots of circumstances where there were some French that were involved in things that, go look at like the Charlemagne French that were trying to save Hitler at the end there.
now, to be fair, they actually mostly just hated communists. But
True. I mean, they looked at it and said, "Hey, these guys hate communism too. Let's just fight with them." But
yep,
doesn't mean that they weren't fighting on the same side in some points.
absolutely.
So I don't know if we got more that we can talk about this subject.
Well, I'm limited to what I can play based off of what models I actually have painted. So I don't think that I have a flamethrower, so I haven't played or had those played against me yet. But I think that's one of those things that felt really good in version 1 when I read those rules. I don't know if they're still going to be really good. So flamethrower, I think, is one of those things that I don't think we've seen yet. Or really high level command choices like a major or a captain or anything like that, where you can snap to action, 4 dudes. So
Like your entire army.
Yeah, if you're going to pay that much for them, it probably would limit the amount of order dice you'd end up with. But
Yeah, you'll be pulling like literally all your dice out. So, from my experience or what I've seen, I feel like flamethrowers are still really good. I feel like when you can bring a unit that can have a flamethrower, they tend to do a little better. So, like assault engineers are perfect, or most engineering units could take a flamethrower, um, which I think is a little better because they tend to be less. They're a little easy, a little harder to target, right? Um, with snipers and whatever, like snipers can still target them, but they seem to be less of a target for some reason. So I feel like units that can bring those types of things can be really good. That's from my experience from a flamethrower perspective. But I don't know if anyone else has any. I've played a couple both ways, and I feel like the ones inside units tend to survive longer and do better.
Yeah, I would call that a fair assessment of them.
I only get to take them as a two-man team, and the big thing that so flamethrowers, their role was pretty much like bunker clearers, but or building clearers, stuff like that, because they only take modifiers for moving in pins. They don't consider units being down. They don't consider units in terrain, and they still only do D6 unless you get a vehicle one. They do 2D6, but so but I think we've discussed this last time that people kind of stay clear of buildings this episode because almost anything, I mean, they're death traps, pure and simple. There's the flamethrower is one more thing that just makes that a bigger death trap. That's what I found in flamethrowers anyway. I've played against one, and I saw one burn a church to the ground. I don't know how sacrilegious that was, but, you know, that was very interesting. It took one roll, and the unit inside was just gone. It's like, huh, hey, look, flamethrowers are really interesting against people inside buildings. Didn't take much, which I guess makes sense, because it doesn't take a lot to set wood on fire, right?
Yeah, they were good. They're still good. I don't think that's really changed, and I think they're still good against people in buildings.
I wouldn't call them an auto-include for, like, a tournament list. I think they'd be fun to throw on the table with one of your buddies, and, you know, I mean, Britain can't put them in units themselves. They're a standalone two-man team, but so I've never actually included them either.
That's fair. Like I said, I think I tend to typically include them in units that are like assault engineers, where I can bring them as an upgrade to a unit instead of as a standalone piece. Just from it seems to be more efficient that way because that unit is typically going to be, like their name says, assaulting something.
Right, the unit offers them some support. Germans
Right.
have that capability. U.S. has that capability. I know Italians do. I don't know if Japan has an upgrade option for engineers in there, but there's many countries do have that option for a squad of guys to have those particular weapon upgrades, which gives them a lot of protection until they need to use it.
I think the Japanese were more on the receiving end of the flamethrowers than the other side. So I don't
It's
think
never
we
a good
have-
place to be.
No,
No,
you don't want to be facing one.
no.
Kind of, they might have deserved it to some respect. I'm just going to say, like, they were asking for it.
I don't think they were actually asking for it. But yeah, I mean, war is it was an awful thing. But I'm not sure
You're right.
they weren't going, bring it on exactly.
They weren't saying, you're right, they weren't saying, can you please light me on fire? But they were still shooting guns at them and popping out of holes in the ground, trying to shoot at them. So they kind of, like I said, they kind of were asking for it.
All right. Yeah. So I mean, other than those things, and I haven't played with tanks because I don't really have many. But
You did
Yeah,
get
it's
yourself
true.
a Chiha, my friend.
I
Get
actually
some
just-
tanks.
The one I just painted is a Chiha, so
There
it's
you go.
there. So
Good.
we'll see. Yeah, it'll be good. So yeah, but for me, I mean, when we're talking about, I know we asked a little bit about this earlier. You know, what kind of a list or what are you thinking about when you're setting up that list for the tournament? And for me, before I even get to the point of unit selection, I actually think about the tournament in regards to, you know, what are my hopes for my performance, or what am I hoping to get out of the tournament? Because there are a lot of different reasons why we go to tournaments, and especially early on, like before I was really into the competitive play end of it. For the first year, of us participating in tournaments, I wasn't going to be competitive at all. I was just going to, play as much as I could, make as many new friends as I could, and learn as much about the tournaments and how they're scored before I could really give myself the opportunity to think about okay, for this tournament under these specific rules, this is the list that I think is going to do well based off of what my objective for that tournament actually is, which might be a little different than just well, we're always going to include this list, and you have to have something to deal with armor and stuff like that.
So you're looking for more of just to see how the quote unquote tournament scene plays out before you worry about it. I think the tournament scene is actually still kind of growing and developing as this. I think the bolt action is kind of really starting to hit the forefront of everything at this point. I'm not sure how overall scoring is going to be.
Right, and so that is, I mean, I guess that's part of the fun when you get that tournament pack for the first time, as you go through and you read about what the organizers have put together to try to get a sense of, all right, so what can we do at this tournament and those kinds of things, and that is fun. Or in the past, I found that to be a fun exercise. Okay, how are they going to score painting? Is sportsmanship, does that figure into it? Is there any composition around list selection and things like that? How many rounds are there? How are they scored? All of those things and how they all go into the overall. I think with bolt action, we're seeing something unique, at least for me, in that there's this historical component and the narrative play and stuff like that. So again, that first time out, it's about, okay, so what is this tournament about? How do they play down at this event center, or when we go to Bug Eater? So how do they do it in Nebraska or Acon? What do those folks do? And to just kind of get a sense of what the community is in the region and that kind of stuff. Because the last thing, I mean, if you think about it, when things got huge here in our region and we had people traveling in to go to our tournaments from other regions, the East Coast, the West Coast, that kind of stuff, we find that it can be very different depending upon where you're coming from. And so I guess I always just try to go, as, I don't know, not responsibly, that's not the right word, but go in with an open mind and trying to, make sure I respect what is in place already.
So here's what I've always said. So you've got the bolt action book. Everyone has. There's 12 scenarios in there. Every tournament's going to have some variant thereof, whether it's, we're doing theatrics or we're doing, who's best general. Everything's going to be variant on that. If you just play the game based on how those scenarios are written, learn to build your list based on, take at least a third of those and hope you can have your list do well in a third of those, and you have a chance. And I think we're still kind of seeing the community grow, like Dale was talking about, as far as what scenario is going to be played, how they're going to be scored, how the overall theme of everything is. And just, I mean, really, this is a game for me that I'm finally getting into. Back when I was doing Warhammer Fantasy, it was, we had to play games, prepare for a tournament, play games, prepare for a tournament, and then the tournament was just like, oh my god, hey, look, I lost all but one game. That was outstanding fun. These are more fun for me as everyone is still kind of in the same learning curve as this game is relatively new and is catching fire. And just seeing how these things develop is kind of cool from my standpoint. So I agree with what you're saying, Dale, is that we're still trying to find out how these tournaments are going to be what they're going to be. And I think that's kind of fun just to be at that point in the game. I haven't been... I didn't play Fantasy back from 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th edition to where all that stuff was developed early on, and now we have a chance in the game that we're playing. Like you said, it's also historically, how are they going to tie that element in? And I think that's the most exciting part about the game for me, anyway.
Yeah, I think there's something else that you caught on in there that I think was kind of interesting, and that's kind of the historical relevance of it. So coming from Warhammer, I think there were a lot of people that were just kind of like, screw the fluff. I'm going to make things as broken as I possibly can, or I'm going to break the rule set. Yeah, min-maxing to an extent, right? Whereas they were trying to be as competitive as they possibly could be in forsaking the rules. They're just saying, screw the rules. Like, I don't need the rules, or I don't need the history of it. I don't need the fluff. but that's because it was fictional, right? Like there was less like actual relevance to it because some dude just wrote that stuff, somewhere in the UK, and just that was somebody's thoughts. Whereas I think at least with this, I think there's at least some more consideration to it because it actually happened. So there's something to be said about that, right? Like people aren't just be like, screw this event that happened because I'd rather make it cooler. Like no, I think people are actually trying to be considerate to the fact that I think we all respect that World War II happened, and we respect the people that all fought in it. And I think that's something to be said. Like when we're building a list, we're at least trying to take into some historical context as to what we're doing. We may not be perfect. Like I have a Puma in my early war Germans, but for the most part, I think we're all trying to be a little bit more respectful of actual history versus fictional history.
I've seen a lot of the tournaments actually like want you to kind of come up with a story of why your army you have is what the army you have is, and I think that's a cool element. And I think for me personally, I mean, I'm not a terrible painter, but I'm pretty sure that best painted army is well out of my scope of reality. I can just go ahead and admit that now. But I think a chance to actually like write a story about what my army was, like you're talking about, and honor those people that actually did physically do this and make it a part of reality that is there that we don't have in fantasy, that we didn't have when we played the fantasy that somebody just made up. I think that's a cool element that I haven't dealt with in a tabletop strategy game before, or just any game for that matter before. I think it's got a really cool element to it.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Is there anything else you want to cover on the idea of making a list? I think so. One of the things that I do, and I do this all day at work because I get bored. Is so if you're not familiar with it, there are several tools out there that you can use to build your list. I typically use the Easy Army. So if you go just search Bolt Action Easy Army on the internet, you can go look. It has like the reinforced platoon selector, but it also has all the theater selectors too if you'd rather do that. But I mean, obviously for most tournament play, you're going to use the reinforced platoon. So it's it's fun to play around with that, get your 1,000-point list, try and figure out what you're going to bring in it. And, like I said, I think we kind of gave you some guidelines early on, Rocky, because we're still talking to Rocky in some respect here, like what the things you should do to make your list work for a tournament. But I think going into that and playing around, trying to find that sweet spot of, trying to hit your 1 dice per 100, make sure you have at least 4 units of infantry at 1,000 points and those kinds of things. But so if you just go do boltaction.easyarmy, I think, boltaction.easyarmy.com, is that correct?
As soon as you hit Bolt Action Easy Army, it's going to take you there.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Unless you're not using the Google or some other poor search engine, you'll do all right.
Yeah, so if you're not using Yahoo, I think it'll probably take you there.
Nice. Or AOL Online, is that the other one?
Yeah, which still has 1 million subscribers, by the way, just in case you wanted to know some really bad facts. They still have 1 million paying dial-up subscribers.
They're not a sponsor for this, are they?
No, it's just a really weird internet shit I know because I work in the internet business. And it makes my head hurt every time I hear it.
So how do we plug into that demographic for subscribing to
those
podcast?
They're probably past their prime of wanting miniatures and paint them and put them on a table.
That's gonna be our grandma and grandpa sitting there, and they signed up for something 20 years ago, and they forgot about it. And it's just
they forgot. They just never can't. Yeah, they haven't. They aren't actually using it ever. No. I think the only way we get into that demographic is we actually print it in the newspaper, and I'm not. Yeah, there we go.
We could send a mass emailing about how we're a king in Nigeria. Maybe we can.
There you go.
Make that happen.
That might work. I have no idea, but yeah, it's kind of a crazy little sidestep. But so there's other choices. There's like Battle Scribe, I think, is another one. I could never get that one. That one was too confusing for me. But if you're familiar with it, there's a bolt action option for it, and that seems to work for some people. I'm going to point out, and this is something that there's like a big strong asterisk next to all of these, is that if you're going to a tournament, you should probably still look over your choices versus the book,
Yeah,
just to make sure there isn't some
I
discrepancies.
know both of those you mentioned have discrepancies for at least my Army book that I have seen, as well as the American Army book, which, of course, we share a mortar pool. So, yeah, there are definitely some inaccuracies. Don't take them as gospel. Take them as good tools to look what you want, and then, yeah, double check it against your Army book. I mean, realistically speaking, you shouldn't be going to a tournament if you don't own your Army book. Not to force a dollar sign on you, but I think that's kind of a bare minimum. Or at least if the unit you're taking, and if you're playing one of the armies that's actually featured in the bolt action rule book, and you're only playing the units from that, you're probably safe. But you should have something in paper from Warlord Games that backs up what you're putting on the table if you are going to a tournament. At home, whatever, all bets are off.
Do whatever you want, but yeah, I think it's almost always a requirement for a tournament is that you have your book and your Army book and any relevant FAQs, because sometimes that comes up. But I don't see. Hopefully, people understand that that's the case. I think almost any tournament that's a requirement. Doesn't matter what gaming system you're in, they require that you have your Army books or your book with you. Thankfully, to me, this game is fairly cheap in comparison to some others. But did I miss anything?
My checklist is set. We got everything we set out for.
I think we're good.
Sweet.
Yeah, Rocky, when you're ready to go to a tournament, I think you'll do fine. So you're always one of the best guys to play with. So go with your strengths. Have a good time. So yeah, you'll be fine. It'll be good. And paint those Americans.
Yeah, paint the Americans. I guess that's the only other thing I have to say about making a platoon or an army list for a tournament is that, this is all obviously caveated by the fact that you need to build to your specific army special rules too, right? I don't know if we didn't cover this yet, have we?
No. In fact, I think that's a great lead into what one of our next episodes or two might be about, is actually covering each army and their special rules and how that actually factors into how you can build those better and how you can actually play to your strengths of your army.
Right. So I think the key thing I'm trying to say here is just like, these are guidelines. Obviously, some special rules around your army are going to supersede anything that we're saying here, just based on what your army has available to you, because every army is a little different. And I think that's important to note, that these are just obviously guidelines, and I think you can change them based on what they are. And I think like Pat said, I think we'll delve into more army-specific topics in the future. Like, we'll talk about just the Americans or the Germans or whoever, and we'll try and break down what we think are really good options or what we think are,
Of course, these are just all simply, a collective group of a-holes opinions, right?
We got some good minds in here.
Yeah,
I'm not saying mine's mine.
And I would also like
maybe
to...
not Pat.
But... what the hell do I know, right? I'm still up at 10 o'clock at night. I'd also like to encourage all of our listeners, and according to records, there has been people downloading this, so whether they listen to it or not, at least they downloaded it. That's very nice. We appreciate that. But send questions in that you have about, or even dude, you guys are full of it. Here's what really goes on at tournaments, or this is really the best way to lay down a list. Give us some feedback on this kind of stuff, so we can, much like Rocky asking us a question, we want to, kind of field this to you guys, right? I mean, that's what we're looking for here. It's ultimately a give and take. We do this. I mean, heck, we can sit around the club and talk about it on Thursday night. We can phone call and do this whole thing too, but we do it because we want the interaction of questions coming from the community to us and see if we can't figure this whole thing out together. Right, guys? That's what we're looking for?
Yep.
I hate feedback. I don't want to hear anything. I'm just kidding. I really appreciate hearing. We've been hearing quite a bit of positive feedback, and I think that's really good for us to keep this moving forward. I agree totally with you, Pat, that this is a community building thing. We're trying to help build community. The only way it's a community is if it goes both ways, right? So I think it's important that people, if they have questions, that that absolutely should shoot them at us, and we'll try and, if we can't answer them, we'll find someone that can. That's really our goal.
So I think to help both of us out here is I'll kind of go ahead and we'll talk to you guys amongst the four of us and kind of get kind of an outline and feel what we want to do over the next couple episodes, and then we'll put that up on our Facebook page, and I think Dale will handle whatever the Twitter stuff. Is that what you call that? Whatever Twitter is, and kind of give you guys an overview of what's going on. So maybe you can get your questions in before we even do the episode, and that can help us get that stuff written.
That's actually a great idea, Pat. At least post.
I don't know. It's starting to sound a little bit like work. I didn't sign up for that. Yeah,
Don't
we'll
worry,
figure.
Dale, all you have to do is read them and tell me what they said, because I don't know what the hell Twitter is.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. I know that we've got a Twitter account. Facebook has already been active, so yeah, and the more we hear from folks, then the better we're going to understand the community, the people who play, what you guys are looking for, what we're completely wrong about, and we want to know what we're talking about. We want to be good at this, and so you guys can definitely help us out in a really big way in that regard.
Awesome. Yeah. So with that, you can find us on Facebook at the Snafu Podcast. You can like us there if you like us. You only do it if you like us. Don't do it if you just because you feel like you have to. We're Minnesota
Facebook
nice here.
hasn't given a dislike, fortunately. So if you,
Oh, they have recently. Yeah, they got
see how up to date I am.
They got the angry like. They give you all sorts of options now.
That's not disliking us. That's just everyone showing us their war face.
I'll take it.
Close enough. It means you're not happy. Whatever. Yeah, we're on Twitter at the Snafu Podcast. I don't think we're quite as active on Twitter as we are anywhere else. Seems like Facebook is where everyone's at. You can subscribe to us on iTunes at the Snafu Podcast. If you just search Bolt Action, we show up pretty quickly. Look for the giant red and white star circle thing. You'll find us. We're also now in Google Play as of, I think, Tuesday of this week. I think I got us hooked into it. I can't confirm because I have an Apple device, so I actually have no access to their Google store.
I'll ask my 3-month-old how to figure out how to look for us on Google Play.
Perfect. That sounds great because I have no idea how to get in there. What is this thing? Get off my lawn. Anyway.
Nice.
Thought I'd throw that in there. So anyway, I think Snafu over and out.
Cool.
Roger that.
See you guys.